I'm very excited to get all these people together because there's a full universe to talk about now. There's a lot of crossover. There's count them, 3 shows and another 2 on the way. So The Walking Dead has just exploded in all different directions. And I'm very, very, very excited to talk to everyone today. Just before we get started, I want everyone to know The Walking Dead episode 1016, the show that was supposed to be the season finale of last season, which is technically not a finale anymore. We'll cover that. 1016, which is the Whisperer War Final Showdown, is going to be airing Sunday, October 4th at 9/8 Central, immediately followed by the series premiere of Walking Dead World Beyond, which is at 10/9 Central, then followed by Talking Dead at 11/10 Central, and then we're going to talk about both of those shows. Then the following week, Fear the Walking Dead has its season premiere Sunday, October 11th at 9/8 Central, followed by the second episode of Walking Dead World Beyond. And then they're going to run in tandem for the rest of their seasons. So there's been a lot of Walking Dead news in the past few weeks, and we're going to cover all of it. There are now 6 additional episodes for season 10, and they're going to air early next year. Season 11, it was announced, is going to be this mega season, which will mark the end, the wrapping up of the original series. But that's 2 years from now. So we're not going to lament about what happens at the end of 2022.
That's right.
We're going to talk about the present because the present is what we have. And we're going to talk to all these people about where we're at now. Also, there's going to be a spinoff, a Daryl and Carol spinoff in a couple of years, and an anthology series, Tales from the Walking Dead. So that is a lot of business up top. Thank you for listening to me talk this whole time. Go back and listen if you want to write all that down, and there's going to be a quiz later. But right now, joining us, Chief Content Officer of the Walking Dead universe, Scott M. Gimple is here. From The Walking Dead original show, we have showrunner and executive producer Angela Kang is joining us, along with cast members Norman Reedus and Paola Lázaro, who plays Princess. From Fear the Walking Dead, we have executive producers Andrew Chambliss and Ian Goldberg, along with cast members Lennie James and Coleman Domingo. And from the new show, Walking Dead World Beyond, we have showrunner and executive producer Matt Negretti, along with wonderful cast members Aaliyah Royale and Annette Mahendru. And that's it. That is everyone. That is our 11 panelists. Now, first I want to ask Scott M. Gimple, or Scott Gimple, as I refer to you on Talking Dead. This you can see, and this isn't even everyone. How, as the Chief Content Officer, are you keeping all of this in your head? How do you balance all of the storylines and all the characters as these universes start to expand outward?
I talk to each of the showrunners quite regularly, and we're diving into these shows all the time and the business around these shows. So we're living it day to day, week to week. So, you know, nobody disappears from the mind because, you know, you just said all the stuff we're doing that every day, every week. So
that's a lot. Do you feel the anxiety well up when you hear about all the stuff that you have to look out for?
I think it was a weird announcement last week because, you know, it was, you know, somewhat about an ending, but there's so much to do.
Right.
There's just so much to do. There's such a giant mountain to climb, and all these shows are chugging along. And I guess one thing that COVID kind of changed is the shows occupied different states of production in different times of the year. One was shooting, well, one was writing, well, one was posting. There was overlap all the time. Now they're all happening at once. So it's intense for all of us, though there have been opportunities along the way for all of us to help each other. Whether it be like super practical things as far as like sharing personnel or techniques or whatever. So, you know, just to be corny, we become that much more of a family.
Well, I do have to say, having been present for 10 years of The Walking Dead, I can confirm that. And it's always nice to sort of see the evolution of the show, the evolution of characters, the evolution of the performers with their characters and with the fan base, which none of us would be here without the Walking Dead family fan base. So I absolutely support and understand what you're saying. For Angela, as I mentioned at the top, 1016 was supposed to be the season finale last year, and then obviously the pandemic and everything got flipped upside down. So what was the decision to extend 1016, and how are you tackling that now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the decision really came about as a reaction to the reality of being in a COVID pandemic world. We'd been hard at work on what was our planned season 11. We have, we're always on the same kind of template for the year. The writing room starts in January. We run for a few months. We start our prep activities kind of in spring, then we start shooting at the end of April, and then obviously like kind of right around that time is when the shutdown started happening. And so, as the studio and as the production started to grapple with how do we make the show safely, which is a question that everyone across television was asking themselves, we looked at what we had planned to do as the next episode, and we're like, we can't do this. This requires like hundreds of zombies in these scenes, and people are like smashed close together in interior spaces. Like, this is not, realistically, we can't do this. And so, the studio made the decision that we should extend season 10, do these additional episodes that we can film in really like a safe fashion while we're still doing something creative and hopefully very satisfying, deep dives into character. And so it really came about that way. And then we've just been buried in all the logistics of it. But, I've got a great producing team on the ground that's been working on all of that.
Well, that idea of taking deep dives into the characters, I feel like is also part of the foundational storytelling element of Fear this season. So for Ian and Andrew, can you talk a little bit about the anthological approach to this next season of Fear?
Sure. It kind of came about in the way that we ended season 5 with all of our characters being split up to different sections of Virginia's communities. And where Andrew and I got really excited about as we were structuring season 6 is this was an opportunity to see into those communities and also to tell very focused, targeted 2 and 3 character stories like we've done a couple times in the previous seasons with John Dory and Laura in the Laura episode, and Alicia and Charlie in Close Your Eyes. These are stories that we really love because they can be their own self-contained movies that really, is exciting for us as writers. It really allows our cast to get into some meaty stuff with these characters, and it tells a complete emotional story. And each episode has its own identity, its own kind of movie and world that it lives in. So it's been very cool for us and a big change of pace.
And I mean, it's also had the added benefit as we are now kind of looking at going back into production in a couple of weeks that we haven't had to make huge creative shifts just because the stories we were telling were already kind of COVID friendly because, there's scope and scale to it, but we're talking about stories with 2 or 3 characters. So we're not having to deal with logistics of like, how do you get 12 series regulars ready when you can only put 2 people in a makeup trailer? Right. So yeah, it's had that kind of added benefit that, all the stuff we had been writing, we didn't have to kind of tear down and build back up again.
I'd love to jump over to the other showrunner, Matt Negretti, who made the leap from regular Walking Dead writer's room to showrunning World Beyond. Can you talk a little bit about the bridging of those worlds? Because in a way, the idea of World Beyond is not just about the central characters of that show. It's also for the fans. It's like there is a world beyond the shows that you've seen, and it seems like that's kind of the promise of the new series as well. Can you talk about any of that?
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting because, as a writer on The Walking Dead, like my goal for each episode I wrote was always to honor the series. I was a fan of The Walking Dead before I was hired to write on it. And now that, I have this show, it's really about making sure for me that this show honors the universe now and that we do right by the fans. And as a writer on The Walking Dead, a lot of us in the writer's room were always talking about we love this show so much and these characters, but there was always that question out there of what are the other stories out there happening? Like, this is something that happened not just to the country, but presumably, the world. And there are so many different, as as Scott can attest to, different stories out there that we could tell. And so, when Scott approached me at the end of season 9 about developing this show, I just jumped at it because, it was a show that obviously had to justify itself. There's no point in doing another show if it's just going to feel like a carbon copy of the other 2 shows. So it's really about honoring the things that fans love with the original series, but putting a different spin on it. And for this show in particular, it was really about, focusing our view of the apocalypse through a different lens. And in this case, it was the lens of young adults that are trying to find out who they are and trying to figure out who they want to become. So with all that in mind, like I said, when Scott asked me if I wanted to do this, I just jumped at it.
Well, and it's such a great chunk of the Walking Dead universe story because it's basically 10 years in, and it's a whole group of young adults who basically grew up sheltered in a completely sheltered environment. And they understand the apocalypse, but it's not like they haven't had a lot of firsthand experience with what the world is like. So I'd love to start with Annette and Aaliyah. And how has the experience been for you joining this universe?
It's incredible. The welcoming that we got at New York Comic Con last year just felt like so much love was in that room. The way that these fans are invested in these characters and in these storylines, it's stronger than anything I've ever felt before. But just being new to The Walking Dead, being new to this universe that has had so many stories that says like the world has basically gone to hell, like things are crazy. These 4, young adults, we don't feel that way. We feel like there's so much more for us to do. We are so curious about what's outside of this sheltered community that we've been in for 10 years since the night the sky fell, that we're ready to take on whatever is on the other side of that, whether it's a walker, an empty, or finding who we actually become as adults in this world.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned New York Comic Con last year because that was quite literally a year ago. And at that point, no one knew anything about this show. It had just been announced, and y'all had assembled for the first time on stage, and now you've had this year-long journey. And so for Annette, how does it feel now that like it's just going to be out there in the world? Is it exciting? Is it sort of anticlimactic? Does it feel odd? Is it surreal? How are you feeling?
I think it'll take us back watching the show and how things were when we were making it and just being together in one room, and that will bring up a lot of good vibes and feelings, and we're going back soon and we're determined, and I think this will just bring the fire into getting the world back, getting every world back to what it was. And it's been incredible to join this family. I grew up as the only child, so I'm completely flabbergasted. This is every child's dream, to be part of something so ginormous and gorgeous. And and even talking like this, we're always together.
Well, I actually did get to see the show. The show is wonderful. It has such a good vibe, which also stresses me out because things feel very safe. Well, I don't want to give too much away, but in parts of the first episode, things feel very safe. And when you start to feel safe on a Walking Dead show, like, oh my God, something's going to go sideways. But everyone's performances are fantastic. Yours, Nico Tortorella, Alexa Mansour, Nicholas Cantu, Joe Holt. Can you talk a little bit, Annette, about the character of Huck and how she fits into everything? Because people haven't seen the show yet, and I just want to kind of give them a sense of what they can expect.
Huck is really, really cool, like mad cool, like the coolest person I've ever met. And she's been out there and she's survived all kinds of things, and just having walked in her shoes for 5 months, and then everything that's happened in the world, I feel like it was just the best prep I could have gotten. And she just has a good attitude about it all. She's seen it all, and she's very hopeful and optimistic, and she wants everybody, she's ambitious, but she's not forcing anybody to you know, come together and just not forcing her beliefs upon anybody. She wants everyone to have their unique journey and come together in their authentic way so they can bring their power, and ultimately that's how we come together and how we can bring the world back. And so she's kind of, you know, just a really exceptional optimist in that way, because it seems impossible, you know, it seems impossible when the kids step out of the safe community and see what's left. You know, I don't think anybody is able to find hope and make anything of it, you know, anything good of it. So you sort of need a mentor by your side. And Nico plays Felix, Nico Tortorella, and we're partners. You need a partner, and I couldn't have asked for a better partner in crime. And we're adults, so we got to take that responsibility and watch out for the young, and that's exactly what we do.
Aaliyah, can you talk just a little bit about Iris? And obviously I don't want to give too much away, but Iris definitely feels like sort of the rule follower of the group, and she's faced with certain choices in the first episode that she has to make. Can you talk a little bit about her and her kind of value systems at the beginning?
Absolutely. The night the sky fell, that's what we call basically the apocalypse happening. We lost a lot of people, and for Iris and her sister Hope, they lost someone really, really important to them. And so we spent 10 years in this very sheltered community, self-sustaining, incredibly thriving. Education is great, food is cool. But at some point, we worry about losing someone else really important to us, my sister and I, and we go, okay, we can stay here, live in the dark, not really know what's going on with the CRM and just be afraid, or we can leave and actually make something of ourselves and determine our own fate. And we do. It's Iris's idea to leave the community, and that's super crazy. At the same time, you're dealing with really fearless people on this show. Like Silas, Iris, Hope, Elton, we're ready to take on anything. And that's really powerful to show young adults making that choice for themselves and not having to be told to go out and do that.
Right. And also for the hardcore Walking Dead fans, we are going to start to see, you know, Rick gets taken away in a helicopter, and
Those three rings.
I feel like some of that story starts to unfold, and that's, I think, another reason how World Beyond fits so beautifully into the universe. I want to jump over to Lennie and Coleman. Coleman, it feels like not that long ago that you were the new kid on the block with Fear, and now that's 6 seasons in. And you know, Lennie has been with Walking Dead since literally the beginning. So do both of you have some advice for Annette and Aaliyah as they enter this incredible universe?
No. I actually have no advice, because I think that you just have to, I personally believe that to maintain the authenticity of what you're doing with your show, it's important to know your world, because I think that keeps it authentic and keeps it, you know, so diverse from The Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead. I made it a point, you know, I know that there are people who watch across platforms, which I think is really awesome because they want that information. But I like the idea that I really don't know much about the other universes. So I know only my operating systems within the universe that, you know, that Ian and Andrew create. You know, I only know that. And so I have no idea what's happening in the other worlds, but it's kind of cool when I see people from the other worlds, because I know that we're all fighters and we're hanging in there. We're still there. And good Lord, I'm one of the last ones still standing from the original Fear, and that's really awesome.
Lennie, do you have any advice?
Lennie?
You've been on this journey since the very beginning.
Yeah, don't outstay your welcome. And my rule when I was on Walking Dead is, and I wanted to live, was just stand as close to Norman as possible. No bullets were coming in that direction. But now my advice would be, really, I mean, I'd echo everything that Coleman just said, and focus on your particular show. But outside of that, I'd also say focus on the show you're making and not the show that goes out into the world. Try as much as possible when you're shooting to shut off what your show is in the world, because it's it can be distracting, and just focus on the gig would be my advice.
I'm sure people know this. Lennie and Coleman also have directed Walking Dead episodes. And then side shout out for Coleman's series Bottomless Brunch, which is a fantastic show that Coleman, during the pandemic, basically started a show where he was like a virtual brunch that he has, and that's on YouTube, and you should definitely watch it. But as directors, can you talk about how that changed your perspective, not only about your involvement in the universe and how your perspective in the universe, but also your perspective on your own characters? I guess we could start with Coleman.
You know what? That's a great question. I think that I knew that I wanted to, because I know it so well and care for it so much, the way our show operates. I knew that it just made natural sense that one of us or a few of us should start directing episodes and be champions of it, to know it can be, to help elevate it to the best self it can be. You know what I mean? Because, we know, we're not just coming on and it's not a gig, not saying that our directors do that, but it means something a bit more personal to you, to explore these characters in this way and to understand their journeys. I know that whenever I get a chance to direct, let's say Maggie Grace and Austin Emilio, I just love the opportunity. When Austin's first episode happened and I directed that, he told me, he said, my character never smiled before. And I was like, I didn't know that, but I knew that in the given circumstances in his journey, that I said, I want to see that big, beautiful smile of yours and see what that does.
Austin did smile in episode 711.
He did. He didn't remember. He thought, my character doesn't smile. I was like, well, you're going to smile this time because you're meeting John Dory, and who doesn't get to smile?
Well done, Chief Content Officer Scott M. Gimple.
Look at Scott M. Gimple coming in for the, for the kill.
I really just track the smiles. That's it.
You cool. Great. So that's pretty awesome. And for my own character, I haven't been able to direct myself yet, so we'll see. Well, I'll let Lennie talk to you more about that.
Yeah, I directed myself in one little scene, and it was weird. It was the one part of the whole directing process where I just thought, well, that was just terrible. Let's not do that again. The rest of it I loved. I had a lot of support from the cast and crew. Coleman particularly was a great mentor to me during the process. In fact, on the morning of my first day of directing, Coleman sent me a text. I kind of woke up to it, so I've got no idea how early he must have got up. But he sent me a text of all the do's and don'ts to do on your first day, and I followed it religiously, and it was a great help to me. I think that it's a very weird thing that happens. Two things that I remember from directing is, one, time moves very, very differently when you're on the other side of the camera. And two, I didn't know how much I knew about this universe and how much I knew about our show until I was directing it and having to view it from a different angle. And that was a kind of great bonus. So it was exciting. I haven't been that scared on a set in a very, very long time. So it kind of replenished some of the juices. So it was fantastic. I had a really good time.
I'd love to ask just a quick little Morgan character question for you, which is, and no one has seen this, but when this comes out, no one will have seen it yet. But at the end of last season, Virginia shoots Morgan. He's pretty much left for dead. And then AMC released some pretty striking images of Morgan, where there's definitely something, I don't know there's something going on. So without obviously spoiling anything, what can you say about where he is at now at the beginning of season 6, and what can we expect?
I can tell you absolutely nothing. Honestly, this is the Walking Dead universe. But what I can say, which is one of the things that the boys, Andrew and Ian, have done fantastically, and one of the things I'm most impressed about you know, 10 years down the line, that we're still creating new walkers and putting the characters in new situations and being able to, you know, tell new stories in new worlds with new, you know, new survivors, is that the boys take Morgan to a position where I'm pretty certain no other character in the universe has been as yet. And so it's a kind of, it's a new place. That's about as much as I can say. They take Morgan to a new state of being, really, and it was interesting being there, and you know, considering how long this particular character has been part of the universe, it was interesting to go someplace he hasn't been before.
Yeah, especially with a character like Morgan, who's had so many different iterations along the way. He has evolved in such an interesting way in the past 10 seasons, that being able to go to new places with him must be wonderful as a performer.
It is, yeah. I mean, it's kind of, if I was saying this to someone the other day, if when I first came to America and I did my first ever job, and before we'd even got the back 9, so after 13 episodes, that was already the longest I had ever played a character in my career at that point. And 10 years later, I don't even know how many episodes I've been in and how long I've been playing this guy. And if you told me then, I would have gone running to the hills going, don't do that to me. But so yeah, it's been a trip. It's been a hell of a journey, and the fact that we're still doing it staggers me. I don't know about anybody else.
I'd love to jump over and talk to Norman and Paola. So in as much as World Beyond, all of the actors on World Beyond are starting their journey now in the Walking Dead universe. Paola, you are having a similar experience as Princess, who is a beloved character. And how has it been for you to start your journey?
It has been, I mean, I know I said this before, but when I got the sides for the character, I completely fell in love with her. Something about her vulnerability and her pain really broke my heart, and really, I don't know, it just got into me. And as an actor, when you get those texts with meat on them, you just want to like devour it. And getting the job was just a dream come true. And not only that, like I think that's the least of it. Being welcomed into this family of beautiful, joyful, passionate people who are passionate about doing this work has been just an extreme gift.
Yeah, I mean, we had pre-recorded the panel for New York Comic Con yesterday and assembled this huge group of The Walking Dead, and halfway through I forgot that it was a panel. It was like, oh, these are just people who care about each other, who are just hanging out and catching up and checking in,
Yeah.
how everyone's doing. I mean, it's such a wonderful group.
It feels like a family of outcasts. You know what I'm saying? That found, and I love being around that outcast. That's my crew. It feels like a family of outcasts that found each other and are like, yeah, let's go, let's do it together. You know?
Island of misfit toys.
For sure.
Hey now.
I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Scrappy weirdos.
Norman, the other person in this group who's been on since the beginning, Daryl obviously wasn't in the comics, and so this character basically was created out of thin air in the Walking Dead universe, and he's another character who has had such an interesting evolution. At all the different stages of watching him sort of be, you know, under Moral's thumb, and then coming into his own, and then being a loner, and then being a leader. And is there a particular iteration of him that is most appealing to you?
You mean all the different haircuts I've had?
Yeah, all the different haircuts.
Yeah, or no haircuts. Yeah, you know that I got really lucky with the writing staff on the show, because right from the beginning, I wasn't sure. I came in on the 3rd episode, and I wasn't sure how to play this character, and I kind of found it during the first take of the first scene that I was in, and I was like, oh, that's who this guy is. And then there were certain avenues I wanted to go down and explore, and the writers let me talk talk with him, like, you know, there was certain things that was where he was a racist or he did drugs, and I just saw him sort of becoming Merle. And after conversations back and forth, they let me manipulate that a little bit, and I wanted him to have a chip on his shoulder and be more of an Al-Anon member, not an Alcoholics Anonymous member, and be really unhappy about the way that he grew up and where he was headed in his life. And because of the apocalypse, it threw us all together and all these different people together, but it gave Daryl an opportunity to be somebody that he wouldn't have been without it. And he got to stand on his own 2 feet, and you could see the character sort of slowly talk just out of the side of his eyes. And he if he looked at you straight in the face, he was probably going to punch you in the face. But everything kind of went this way, and it's because he had a chip on his shoulder. And as the seasons progressed, he slowly started to talk to you directly, and you could trust him, and you could believe what he said. And I think without having that collaboration with the writers, he would have just been an angry redneck like his brother. And I think it gave him a sense of purpose, and it gave him a sense of confidence and strength and family. And, you know, I think about all the people that I've been on this show with, and Scott Wilson and Damon and Bernthal and all these, you know, Steven, all these great people. And I feel like the character of Daryl, he's learning, and he's taking all these people with him, and he's making decisions based on those family members that he learned with and he paid attention to and he respected. And because of all these different people, he's becoming something that I think is really beautiful. So I have to thank the showrunners and the writers for letting me play with that, you know.
Well, that was beautifully put. And you sort of
you know what's crazy is I'm actually at the studio now because I live way out in the woods and I have horrible Wi-Fi. But if you look around, I don't even know if I can do this, but these are all the people that have died on the show.
Oh my God.
There's a whole other wall.
Oh yeah, there's a whole nother wall. And which is crazy, but you know, it's true. Like like Scott Wilson became like, you know, one of my favorite people. You know? And I talk to Andy all the time. It was his birthday the other day, and Bernthal's was yesterday, and we all still talk. And you know, it's very life-changing in a million different directions. You know?
Well, yeah, and one thing that I think that's so wonderful about Walking Dead, and even being sort of a tangential part of Walking Dead, is just sort of seeing the acknowledgement of the fandom and the connection that the performers have, that they are also fans and sort of understand that we all are in this rarefied television era. I mean, shows just don't go 10 seasons. There's just like, it's so rare in television, especially to have one show go 10 seasons, but expand outward. And so, you know, has the expansion of the Walking Dead universe, has that been mind-blowing for you, Norman, to see where it all started, which is basically just this intimate, you know, like weird little show on a distant cable channel, you know, 10 years ago, that essentially changed the face of television and has now become this phenomenon. I mean, do you trip out on that sometimes?
I trip out on it. Sometimes I run from it. Sometimes I hide in my room from it. Sometimes I hug it. It's mind blowing. I mean, we've been to every country, and it's just swarms of people. It's bananas. And not only that, just the quality of people. I mean, you take some of the fans' theories and they start to become part of the show in some weird way. And you know, I've always said since day one, like I've never seen the show as like just our show. I've seen it as our show, and I feel like you can't have one without the other. Sometimes, you know, it's mind blowing. It gets weird.
Well, and it's been, for me personally, it's been such an incredible connection point to people. I remember the year of the big cliffhanger, the Negan cliffhanger, and I was walking in Northern California, and there was this old barber across the street just sitting outside his shop, and no one knew who the bat came down on, and I was kind of just walking in my own world or whatever, and I just hear this old guy across the street go, "I think it's Glenn!" And it was like the most incredible experience, and I got to stop and talk to this guy for a couple of seconds and have this connection with him. So, as a fan and being close to it, it's such a wonderful connection point to people. Norman, what are you most excited about to continue as we learned about the Daryl Carroll spinoff that's going to happen in a few years, the continuation of these characters and his relationship to Carol and that continuation of the story?
I mean, you guys were all talking about young adults going through this, and I'm like, I'm definitely not the young adult anymore. I used to be the young guy on the show. You know what I mean? I mean, what the heck?
That's what Daryl
right?
and Carol's about.
Yeah. Thanks. But I'm excited about it. I used to love shows like Kung Fu and Billy Jack and these shows about somebody just like traveling and just experiencing it as it's happening. And but there's a thing about them that I hope we do with the spinoff, Kung Fu or Billy Jack. They would go through a town and people would be like, "Who's that stranger?" Which is going to be crazy to be like, "Hi, I'm Daryl and this is Carol." That's already nuts, and try to explain all of that. But they would go through these towns and people would be like, "Who's that weirdo? Who's that stranger?" And then they get wrapped up in some drama. And then as they left, everyone's sort of point of view kind of changed. They had a thing about them that they weren't trying to change the atmosphere. They weren't trying to make a point. They weren't even trying to really say anything. They were just saying hello. But it changed everyone's sort of perspective on things. I hope we do a little bit of that. And from what I understand, and you'll have to ask Angela and Scott a little bit more, but it's a show of hope. We've hinted about it on The Walking Dead. It's, Carol and I, but it's, let's see who's left. We have all of this, and we've been through so much. Let's see who's out there before it all goes to hell. You know what I mean? So that's the plan, I hope.
Yeah, for me, that sort of journey television show was The Incredible Hulk, and at the end of every episode, the saddest music in the world would play. Hitchhike into another town, and I'd be crying at the end of every episode.
I've already got a song. Ask Angela. I've already thrown songs at that. Yeah.
I mean, Angela, can you talk a little bit?
It's been collecting for years.
Yes.
Angela, can you talk a little bit about even though it's way far off, there's still a ton more Walking Dead to get through before Carol and Daryl, but can you talk about sort of the going from that show into the other show? Are you already thinking about directionally everything?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a strange time, and thinking about the main show ending is so, I don't know, it's hard to think about, but we've got so many episodes to make that it's not really, it doesn't totally feel real, but obviously the writers and I are like having to kind of start that work. But Scott and I have been kind of working on this Daryl Carroll spinoff for a little bit, and just looking for those ways that we are true to those characters, but that is differentiating from the main show. And I do think like what Norman touched on, like this sense of hope, like at a certain point you've got the post-apocalyptic and then the post-apocalyptic. So it's it's kind of that post period, like what happens next. And so I think like that has been, I'll speak for myself, but I mean, Scott and I have talked about this too. There's just something about it that like getting to think about something like that during this time, it's really, I don't know, it's useful and wonderful. So, it's like I kind of got a foot in both worlds at the moment.
And to Scott Gimple, obviously, at the beginning, I sort of was teasing you about you have a lot of stuff to be thinking about at all times, but in as much as you can sort of parse everything out, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about these spin-offs, not just Carol and Daryl, but also the Tales from the Walking Dead, which is in itself its own kind of standalone anthology series. How are you viewing everything as it starts to unfold in all directions? Because obviously the apocalypse didn't just happen to our group of protagonists, it's happened all over the world. So can you talk about how you're kind of reining all that in and expanding it in with the perspective of these two new spin-offs?
Well, I mean, so much of it feeds on each other. Well, actually, that sounds very parasitic. It's the other way around. It's like on each show, the possibilities, the characters, things we talk about, questions that come up, just feed ideas for Tales of the Walking Dead. And just looking for stories that it's like, oh man, we really want to tell this sort of story, but it doesn't fit in here and it doesn't fit in here. Or we want to look back at certain things that have happened to these characters. It's working with people. Coleman and I have just started talking about a Tales. We're just trying to do really different things while also taking really deep dives into things that are on the shows that we love, but we just haven't gotten into. So, and then there's the point of differentiation, like Angela was talking about with Daryl and Carol. Like, these shows have to be distinct from one another, or even how Matt talked about World Beyond. It's like that everything has to justify itself, that it isn't just more, but it's different. I will say one of the greatest sort of points of grist has just been questions that we've been asked, all of us, over the years by fans of the show, by people who work on the show. The crews live in this show, and some of the members have lived in this show for a decade. And I can't tell you how many times I've been pulled aside with just questions about the universe from people who work on the show, or places they want to see explored, or just, just when characters go away, we're all heartbroken, but we know that there was a lot that brought them to the point of their departure on the show, or their entrance on the show.
Yeah, things that you just didn't have time to tell because in that particular storyline within the series, like, like how did people in Terminus become cannibals, or what were other characters like before the apocalypse? Is anything on the table? Like, just the only rule is that it just has to exist within the Walking Dead universe?
Pretty much. It's just not breaking the rules of the Walking Dead universe. Right. After that, it's fair game. We are going to get really into Daryl's hair. I think really taking, that'll be more of a documentary. But no, I mean, we want just every week for the audience to be surprised. Maybe surprised because you're like, oh, damn, I'm seeing that character again. Or, oh my God, I never thought of that. I can't wait to see a story like that.
But even format-wise, didn't you say like animation is on the table, like different ways of telling stories within the universe?
We're talking to certain musical artists about music-driven episodes.
Great.
We want to, I'll say it here. I've been working on trying to do a live episode for about 6 years now. Wow. Angela has been hearing about it in various ways.
Oh my God!
Long time, Matt too. Pardon me, Matt too.
Yeah.
I mean, we really want to push the envelope. There's no point in doing it unless it's different.
Well, as we're sort of wrapping this out, I'd love to go through with all of the performers and kind of find out. This last question comes from the festival sponsor, City. Looking back at the show, and obviously with World Beyond, or particularly in Paola's case, that's not very far back just yet, but I'd love to talk about all-time favorite moments on the show. So I don't know, even though it's been such a short time, Aaliyah, can we start with you? Do you have a favorite moment so far that doesn't give anything away?
There's a lot of history between Iris and Hope, a lot of unsaid things between sisters. But there's this culminating moment earlier on, I'd say, in the season where we tag team these empties, and it is the coolest, like, it had to be probably my favorite scene that I ever shot. Just my sister's in danger and I come and save her, then I'm in danger and she comes and saves me. And the way that you just see these two badass young females coming at these like empties and walkers, it's legendary.
That's fantastic. And just for people who don't know yet, empties is the world beyond term for walkers.
Yeah.
Because every series kind of has their own signature word, and empties is world beyond. Annette, is there a moment that that is a favorite of yours so far?
There's a lot of fire in the world beyond, like literal and metaphysical fire. It's just all going off, and we're in the middle of it all, just in the fire safely. But we're gonna do something really epic, and I really can't say anything about it. But there's gonna be lots of fire, and we're gonna be in it, and we're gonna be fighting just anything because we're so badass. So you just hold tight. We're gonna bring it.
All right. Coleman Domingo, favorite moment. 6 seasons
wow.
now. It's crazy. 6 seasons of Fear.
It's honestly really hard to think about a favorite moment, but I would just say any moments where we move locations. I love when we're shooting in Mexico. I love when we're shooting in LA. I love that we're shooting in Austin. And now I'm itching to like, are we going to keep moving? Are we going to keep going? Because I love how it keeps changing the show and the new people that you meet and ideologies. It's just kind of cool. So I love the travel aspect of the show.
I'm saying we should go to Trinidad next.
I think so.
Why not?
I've been pitching that like we should go to Hawaii or something. I'm really trying to get a vacation in there at the same time. You know? I'm like, doesn't Strand have a boat again? Let's find one. You know?
Well, I love Strand Coleman. I mean, from the first frame that you see him in Fear, it's like I instantly was like, oh well, this character is amazing. And then I've had the fortunate pleasure of getting to become friends with you over the years, and I adore you as a human being and as an artist. And so, just being a part of this, not just professionally, but also becoming friends with a lot of you has been so meaningful to me. So I really appreciate you and your work. And
thank you.
And as for Lennie, favorite moment?
I'm gonna go because I've been very lucky on this show, and I've had lots of kind of memorable moments in this universe. But I'm gonna go for kind of moments when we realize what this show means to the fans out in the world. The moments where the themes we talk about touches real life and makes people either come together. I remember being at one of the conventions and meeting a group of women who had come together as kind of, I can't remember what they called themselves. I think they called themselves Sisters of the Walking Dead or something like that. And they were a group of women who had met online through their love of the show, but had never met because they came from 13 or 14 different countries. Wow. And they came together, I think it was in Tulsa. And it was the first time they'd all got together in the same place at the same time. And they came from different walks of life. They came from different races, different religions, different countries, and they all came together and met because of their shared love of our show. And that moment was really, really powerful. And there's been a number of moments. I remember just very quickly kind of jumping in police cars and getting a police escort across New York with Norman and Cudlitz to meet a Make-A-Wish kid, and having the sirens blowing and going through the center of New York to meet a kid who loved our show. And there's loads of those, and those moments I'll remember forever and be proud of forever, really.
Paola, what about you? Do you have, it's in the time that you've been on so far, favorite memory?
I mean, I want to actually say something in general about an aspect that is, I think, my favorite about the show, and it's the diversity of the cast, specifically not only the diversity in terms of race, but just seeing women of color being leads and strong and intelligent and passionate and courageous. African American women and Latin American women I mean, I think those are my favorite moments when I can see that. And I think it's rare that that shows portray these characters this way. And I think that's my favorite thing. I know it's not a moment, but it's many moments that encompass this this beautiful mosaic of diversity that is this show.
No, that's a wonderful answer, and I love that we're not just talking about moments on the show, but the sort of meta moments that sort of make the show and the community of performers. I think that's a beautiful answer. Norman, what about you? I mean, there are a million moments in your past on the show. Can you even narrow it down to one experience?
I mean, I was going to start and talk and say all the stuff with Rick saying goodbye, that sequence of scenes and all those things. But now that we're on this train of thought, you do really become family with all these crew members. Like, we have this one focus puller named Deej, and I remember when I first got to be friends with him, we were shooting a scene, me and Melissa, downtown Atlanta. And this director came on. It was his first time directing this show, and he goes, "Okay, moving on." I'm like, "Whoa! Can I just try one more thing?" He goes, No, don't have time. And then Deej looks at me and he goes, "Hair in the gate." And I was like, nice. And he and I became friends, and right at that moment. But all the years of working with him, like when I'm in the cell and I'm naked, like I was really naked and like butt naked, and Deej is like right there. He's right down there, pulling the focus, and I'm like, "Sorry, bro," and we became friends there. But my favorite moment is when they introduced this swingy thing with the ball on it, whatever that thing's called, and we had this building is on fire, like this huge building. It's so many walkers, just battles everywhere. It's deep into the night, and we're all exhausted. And I'm swinging this thing, trying to look really, really cool. And I come running up, and those things, like if you don't connect with something, it just keeps going, right? And I'm supposed to swing. Yeah, you hit someone on the head, it'll bounce off, right? But I'm swinging at the camera, and I'm like doing all this stuff. I'm like, chapow, chapow, and I'm swinging, and I swing past the camera, and literally the thing swings by camera, wraps around, and just bangs me in the head, right? And it's like ding, like that, and it hits me like this, and I look up and I see Matt and Deej, and they're like, that was one of my favorite moments. Because, these guys are your family. They've been through everything with you. They've seen me cry a million times. They've seen everything. But, like, trying to look super freaking cool and then think, boom. And then to see their faces first, like, was one of my favorites.
Well, I can't thank everyone enough for their time. And again, even Norman, just seeing the wall of people who've been on the show, to know that, for the new cast members and the new show, that you're just starting this journey, and for the folks who've been on for so long, you're always a part of the Walking Dead universe and family. Once you are on the show, you're on it, and you're a part of the universe. And so I want to thank everyone's hard work for keeping it together, particularly in this very surreal time that we're in with the world, and continuing to tell these stories and bring these communities together. I can't thank you all enough for being here. I'd love to thank PaleyFest Fall TV Preview for hosting us, and for the sponsors Verizon, and for PaleyFest official card City. And if you want to find out more about Paley, you can go to paleycenter.org. And for everyone watching, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you, and I hope you stay safe and healthy out there. I'm Chris Hardwick. We'll see you on Talking Dead, and everyone else, take care. Bye, everyone.
Good to see you, everybody.
Bye. Good to see everybody.
Thank you.